I'm Trina Tree, 503, Portland's marijuana martyr. Join me as I navigate a sea of misconduct right here in Portland, Oregon.
So we can catch the wind. Nothing ahead but smooth sailing. No tidal waves, no hurricanes. Mountain blue and summer days.
Controversy surfaced. State Representative Deborah Silcox admitted during a recent committee hearing that she consulted with one of the companies last year. Cannabis companies who were losing bidders. They have filed suit arguing the bid process was unlawful, corrupt, and rife with conflicts of interest and fraud.
We have to make sure the process is done in a fair way.
Last year, the Georgia Medical Cannabis Commission awarded potentially lucrative licenses to 6 companies to grow and sell medical marijuana. For 2 years, the I-Team has investigated the awarding of medical marijuana licenses in Georgia. We've exposed controversial corporate backgrounds involving 4 of the winning bidders.
I was a consultant on with one of the companies that was applying in this past year.
Then another bid controversy surfaced. State Representative Deborah Silcox admitted during a recent committee hearing that she consulted with one of the companies last year before she was elected in 2022. What kind of help?
Just advice. I mean, I know the legislative process, so just advice.
She voted on a recent...
After originally only recusing herself from an audit on the cannabis industry.
I exercised poor judgment by contracting with a company that is owned by my political donors and is regulated by an agency that was under audit by my audits division. I am sorry for harming the trust that I and so many others have worked so hard to build.
Earlier this week, that's after KOIN 6 learned the Secretary of State was contracted to work for the cannabis company. Now our Elise Haas has more on emails between the two concerning the cannabis audit at the center of this controversy.
The Secretary of State's office confirms, based on emails between Shemia Fagan and the Mota CEO Rosa Cazares, that it appears as though the Secretary of State shared her draft of the audit plan on the cannabis industry with Cazares for feedback in January of 2021. Emails KOIN requested between Cazares and Fagan's government email account show several recommended changes Cazares made about the audit plan. To be clear, the audit plan isn't the audit, but the instructions from the Secretary to the auditors about the title and scope of the audit that they will perform.
Here we have 7 Baltimore City police officers arrested for abusing power in a federal racketeering conspiracy. Officers allegedly robbed victims, filed false affidavits, made fraudulent overtime claims. One officer also charged in a separate 6-defendant drug conspiracy indictment. So here we have a Yuba County deputy accused of transporting hundreds of pounds of pot to Pennsylvania. A Yuba County deputy was arrested while on vacation on suspicion of delivering hundreds of pounds of marijuana. The sheriff's office says 37-year-old Christopher M. Heath was on vacation when he was arrested on Monday, according to the Appeal Democrat. He's accused of transporting 200 pounds of marijuana. It's unclear what prompted the investigation into Heath, and the case is being handled by the York County Multi-Jurisdictional Drug Enforcement Unit. Here we have 7 Baltimore City police officers arrested for abusing power in a federal racketeering conspiracy. Officers allegedly robbed victims, filed false affidavits, made fraudulent overtime claims. One officer also charged in a separate 6-defendant drug conspiracy indictment.
Happy Friday. I get asked all the time for an update on the creepy cop search case out of Putnam County, West Virginia, where plainclothed police officers from the Sheriff's Department's Special Enforcement Unit were caught on hidden camera literally breaking into my client's home, sneaking in through the window, searching the inside of his house for non-existent drugs. To see footage of police officers secretly inside someone's home, where there's no criminal investigation, much less criminal charges, it's just scary, especially where there's no legal justification for them to be there. So this was actually my first YouTube video, uploaded January 15th, 2020. And the footage shows Drug Task Force officers searching Dustin Ellswick's house, including examining the ashes of his deceased friend, brilliantly believing them to be drugs. They also ran those ashes through field drug test kits, disabled an exterior surveillance camera, pulled Dustin's guns out of storage for photographs, and generally ransacked and searched the place. Take a look at the footage.
Text messages as part of the case. You're looking at a text exchange between a Westland police detective and the owner of A&B Towing. They're accused of working together to get an African-American man arrested in 2017 because a close friend of then police chief was worried he might sue the towing company for racial discrimination. The texts were submitted as discovery in the civil case between that man, Michael Fesser, and the city of West Linn. One text appears to lament the fact that Fesser would be prosecuted in Multnomah County instead of Clackamas County, where, quote, he was with some real racist boys. At a West Linn community meeting tonight at the police station, they read a statement from the chief saying there's been a lot of change in the last 3 years.
The former chief, captain, and lieutenant involved no longer work here. 3 sergeants, 1 detective, and 13 officers have also left service from the city of West Linn in that same time frame.
The statement went on to say the only other officer involved is now on administrative leave pending an investigation by Clackamas County. A couple people we talked to say they didn't know enough about the case to comment. Fesser sued in federal court and was just awarded $600,000.
Healing for me and my family, healing for that community, healing for the community here, for the next black man that's going through this, telling him push forward and go to whatever it takes if you know that you haven't done anything wrong.
Fesser sued the city of West Linn in federal court, accusing former West Linn Police Chief Terry Timius and 2 detectives of illegally investigating and arresting him in February of 2017.
The show chronicles the rise and fall of officers on what was once an elite squad. Shelley Orman is looking into where those officers are now.
Fox 45 covered every aspect of this, from their arrest, the plea deals most took, 2 trials, and the officers' sentencings. It has been several years since those court proceedings, so today we're updating you on where the officers involved now are. If you say the letters GTTF in Baltimore, most people know exactly what you're talking about. After HBO's new series, We Own This City, many more people will too. It's a scandal that came to light in 2017, rocking the city and police department. A total of 8 officers on BPD's elite gun trace task force were convicted for racketeering, robbery, extortion, and overtime fraud. The officers admitting to flaunting and abusing their power for almost 10 years, using their badges to commit crimes. They stole drugs and money. Members pled guilty to robbing citizens during street and traffic stops, making illegal searches in people's homes, planting evidence, and providing false affidavits and police reports to further their crimes. In some cases, the group made arrests based on bogus charges that resulted in people being sent to jail for years. Now they're the ones serving time.
A former sheriff's deputy will spend the next few years behind bars for using his own uniform and badge to take part in a heist that seems like it was made for the movies. According to the U.S. Attorney's Office, 43-year-old Mark Antrim and 6 others robbed a warehouse in downtown Los Angeles of $600,000 in cash and 1,200 pounds of marijuana while pretending to be deputies executing a search warrant.
This is about a corrupt law enforcement officer who teamed with somebody who was angry at his former boss and staged a brazen armed robbery in the middle of the night that was set to look like a legitimate law enforcement operation in order to steal marijuana and a lot of cash.
The co-conspirators involved were not law enforcement officers, but Antrim was a Los Angeles County Sheriff's Patrol deputy. Prosecutors say he and the 6 others dressed as LASD deputies and went to the warehouse with a fake search warrant, locked the security guards in a Ford Explorer, and carried out their robbery. They even say that when LAPD officers showed up at the warehouse, Antrim got rid of them by telling them he was a sheriff's deputy executing a search warrant. The total take of the heist was more than $2 million. Antrim pleaded guilty to 5 counts against...
Outraged over a 911 call. He wants to know why no charges have been filed against a police officer who admits to confiscating marijuana from suspects and then baking it in brownies. And once he and his wife were full and high, they thought they'd overdosed and called 911.
I think I'm having an overdose at the store with my wife.
Overdose of what?
Marijuana. I don't know if it had something in it. Can you please send rescue?
Did you guys have fever or anything?
No, I think we're dying.
Okay, how much did you guys have?
I don't know. We made brownies, and I think we're dead. Time is going by really, 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 really slow.
Well, instead of being charged, Prilla. Sorry. Instead of being charged, the police department let the officer resign. His wife was not charged either. So far, police officials have not commented on the case.
Back here closer to home, an Oregon State trooper is facing allegations of misconduct. He's the target of an investigation and civil lawsuit after claims the Southern Oregon drug cop underreported stops and targeted minorities. Here's Kyle Boshi.
From drug busts to saving puppies, Oregon State Police celebrated the work of Trooper Travis Peterson, his accomplishments posted on social media. But now this drug cop from Southern Oregon is attracting attention for another reason: allegations of misconduct.
Travis Peterson has been racially profiling on Interstate 5 and throughout the roads of Jackson County for years.
Later this week, attorney Justin Rosas plans to file a class action lawsuit against Oregon State Police and Trooper Peterson on behalf of 8 men who believe they were wrongly detained while driving through Southern Oregon.
And part of this lawsuit is trying to look out for all of the over-policing of people who are just trying to move along, and people of color predominantly, right, who are just trying to move along.
A review of press releases and social media posts suggests over the past few years, Trooper Peterson and his K-9 have made numerous drug busts along Interstate 5 near Medford, seizing cash, cocaine, heroin, and meth. But court records indicate many of those cases were later dismissed because the trooper allegedly conducted unlawful searches. And there were other problems. A memo from the Jackson County District Attorney shows Peterson failed to document hundreds of traffic stops. He didn't record some K-9 deployment, which impacts a dog's accuracy rating, and some evidence went missing.
He did hide his stops evidence. He did hide his K-9 stops. They do continue to employ him.
The attorney claims Trooper Peterson...
Tonight, we expose allegations of a widespread conspiracy. This involves drugs, corruption, and a cover-up inside many law enforcement agencies.
For months, we've been digging into accusations that officers and deputies in the Bay Area have committed hundreds of acts of extortion, theft, even robbery. He's senior investigative reporter Begad Shaban.
More than 150 miles north of San Francisco, in rural Northern California, you'll find majestic mountain ranges, dreamy coastlines, and weed. Lots of weed. A trio of counties, Mendocino, Humboldt, and Trinity, make up what's known as the Emerald Triangle, one of the largest marijuana producers in the country. Zeke Flatten was driving through southern Mendocino County nearly 4 years ago when he says he found himself at the center of a bizarre crime and cover-up.
This is where we pulled off, and this is where I was robbed, right here.
He was visiting from Texas, in town on a work trip, hoping to launch his own marijuana business, when he saw flashing police lights behind him. He was being pulled over.
At what point did you get the feeling something's wrong?
Within the first 30 to 60 seconds.
He says the 2 men identified themselves as federal agents with the ATF. One of them asked Flatten if he had any money or drugs in the car. Flatten told him he had a doctor's note for medical marijuana.
And he goes, "Oh, that gives us the right to search the vehicle." And right there, I just shut up. I knew that they don't have that right. They don't have a search warrant.
Flatten is a former cop himself and says these men didn't seem to have the right uniforms.
There was not a badge, there was not a name tag, there wasn't a patch on their shoulders. Matter of fact, there was a half circle style patch that had been removed.
What reason would a law enforcement officer have to remove the patch on their uniform?
I have no idea, other than hide their identity.
Flatten tells us the men found 3 pounds of his marijuana, then took a picture of him and his driver's license, then drove off with his weed without ever giving him a ticket.
Oh, I knew immediately that I got robbed. Now it was who did it and how are we going to uncover this.
Flatten filed complaints with the Mendocino County Sheriff's Office and District Attorney that he says went nowhere. He tells us he eventually identified one of the 2 men from a photo as Officer Joseph Huffaker with the Roanoke Park Police Department. Flatten and 7 other people with similar stories then sued Roanoke Park. The city decided to settle, paying out roughly $2 million, but never admitted any wrongdoing.
Police corruption and marijuana have been intertwined in a complex relationship for decades. This video series aims to shed light on this issue, focusing on police misconduct and specifically police misconduct related to marijuana. Police corruption is a form of police misconduct that involves the misuse of authority by a police officer in a manner designed to produce personal gain for himself or others. When it comes to marijuana, police corruption can take many forms, including planting evidence, falsifying reports, accepting bribes, ignoring illegal activities, or helping to shut down the competition. The war on drugs, particularly marijuana, has often been cited as a significant factor contributing to police corruption. The prohibition of marijuana has created a lucrative black market, providing ample opportunities for police officers to exploit for personal gain. I myself believe that Oregon State Police have a big hand in Oregon's black market marijuana. I have some evidence to show you why I believe that that'll come out a little later in the video series. The police misconduct, including corruption related to marijuana, has far-reaching consequences. It undermines public trust in law enforcement, hampers the effectiveness of the criminal justice system, can lead to wrong convictions. In many police misconduct cases, individuals have been wrongly arrested or convicted based on falsified evidence or testimony, and this not only destroys lives, but also erodes public confidence in the police and the justice system as a whole. Coming in at a solid number 1 is Christina Corse. Christina, at all times relevant to the subject matter of this documentary series, works for the City of Portland Cannabis Program. In 2018, Christina was an administrative assistant. Currently, she is the supervisor, licensing, compliance, and policy supervisor. This press conference you're about to see took place on April 11th, 2022. At the exact same time this press conference was being held, and the City of Portland spoke of social equity and record expungement for cannabis convictions, I was 2 blocks away at the Multnomah County Courthouse being prosecuted on felony charges based on fraudulent paperwork that Trina Tree and Rosa Cazares cooked up so they could steal my location on Sandy Boulevard. And they did. Let's listen.
Oregon became the third state in the country to legalize the adult use of cannabis. But I see a problem when the primary beneficiaries of our cannabis industry today are not the communities that were most negatively impacted by the criminalization of cannabis. The Cannabis Policy Oversight Team has identified these problems as well, and today we will hear more about those issues and their recommendations for moving forward. One recommendation I want to address is expungement. It's absurd that people are still suffering from an antiquated law that we changed years ago. When it comes to expunging past cannabis-related criminal records, this should not solely be the work of the city of Portland. We need the state of Oregon to step up and expunge previous nonviolent cannabis-related convictions from all people's records. And we need the federal government to get with the times and change the federal classification.
For social equity, CPOT strongly recommends that the city eliminate systemic, discriminatory, nonviolent cannabis criminal records by developing a city-led and funded expungement program. And I'd like to echo the Honorable Commissioner Hardesty in the fact that in 2014, almost 3,200 days ago, the majority of Oregonians, over 800,000 people, voted to end cannabis prohibition because of the disproportionate impact it's had on Black and brown Americans. The fact that we don't have an expungement program yet is something that the state needs to pay attention to and deal with immediately, because only then we'll start to have restorative justice.
7 years ago, to support the new program, the Cannabis Policy Oversight Team was founded and formed. And to their credit, like I said, this has now become a benchmark at a local, state, and federal level. I also want to quickly just acknowledge the team. Before I started, this program was without officially a leader for several months, almost a year, but under Trina Tree, our licensing, compliance, and policy supervisor, we've been able to keep the program moving forward and not just surviving COVID transition, but thriving. If there are no questions, I did want to just take a second to recognize again the incredible team and the incredible people that I've gotten the opportunity to work with while coming to this program. And if you are up for just gathering behind me for a quick second just to show that power and that energy, I'd love for to bring you up. Yes, please. Oh, Jesse, you have a question? Okay, come on up, Christina, though. Please come. CPOP members, our community.
Just a quick question.
Hey.
Thank you to CPOP for all the work you're doing. I think it's amazing. And I think if there's somebody in the industry who's not getting involved or engaged in what CPOP is doing, what is the best way for industry folks to get more involved and learn?
Webpage, and also if you visit that table, there are some packets there that leave the URL. But again, every other Thursday essentially is what it amounts to. And you can join via phone call just to come in, or we will be eventually opening back up and be able to join by coming in person as well. We encourage the public to come to those meetings. It stimulates the conversation for the Cannabis Policy Oversight Team. It stimulates their work. I would also say, in addition to recruiting for CPOP members, we have 3 subcommittees as well that we are always looking to extend into the community. This is the first year that the subcommittees were really active, and you can tell in the report. It is representative of a very diverse group of community members coming together to ensure that the cannabis program is successful.
You didn't mind me slipping in
No,
here.
come in, yes. I'm glad you did, yes, because the truth is, now we get a good photo op, but I did want to again thank everyone for being a part of this. This is an amazing team to be a part that between Michael Montoya and Dr. Rachel Knox, there wasn't a chance for me to turn this down, but also the program itself, the sensible regulation, the intention behind the regulation, and being able to lead that has been really spectacular. We have a question. Yes. Okay. It's not a touch screen. I'm sorry. Okay. Will the $1 million annual investment in seed continue in addition to the newly recommended programs? Absolutely. Right now, we're very excited about that divestment from police allocation to the social equity and educational development, or seed initiative. So that will continue, and we're looking to expand that. They mentioned the cannabis groups that are distributing the 1.3 million in relief fund have taken the stance out. How would they not share how these funds are being distributed? What steps will the city of Portland take to ensure the transparent use of these taxpayer funds? Well, we are actually really excited how quickly we moved to get that out. We just opened the application February 1st. Disbursements are now being active, and I think once we are able to get a report, then that will be public information. It makes it a lot easier to work with community-based organizations, but they have to do the work. And so right now they're actively dispersing without really the ability to say who has gotten at this point. Anything else? Nope, that looks like it. Yes.
It's beneficial. And I think severely over the last 5 years, as recreation has come in, I hope y'all have noticed that OMD and the patients, we're suffering. We're suffering so hard. Lack of resources, lack of medicine, lack of ability to just grow your own medicine. And I mentioned it to you, but it's not hard to create a patient program in the city. We can benefit hundreds of people, literally 12 plants per person. Not only just that, but we can use that opportunity.
So I think
to teach our background community.
I agree with you so much. And you know what? We need to
contribute when literally we have millions of dollars that
you are familiar with OLCC licensure rules, it sounds like. Is that right?
Sure. Yeah, a little bit on my training experience. In August of 2016, I was assigned temporarily to be the sergeant of the marijuana program, and for a period of about a year to a year and a half, I was probably the only full-time law enforcement officer in the state dedicated solely to marijuana. I watched the original Measure 91 all the way through the legislative process, through sessions in 2015 before I was appointed, all the way up to present day. I've watched almost every piece of every bit of testimony of every marijuana-related bill, so I'm very familiar with the regulations.
And so you're familiar with whether, I think that was, all I was going to, well, the other last question was the marijuana and the BH, the hash oil that was recovered during the warrant. That was sent to the state crime lab for testing, is that correct?
Yes, I believe it was. I have some...
I just wanted to clarify that was
Perfect.
Connected to your investigation.
Yeah, and so what I'm going to do here is it's item E74, so I'm just going to look on the evidence forms and I'll be able to tell you which location that came from. Because frankly, it was in both places, in multiple places. Came from, and it's a sample from a separate item E57 that came from the back freezer room of the dispensary itself, the Ganja, which would be the location 1, or the, I keep saying dispensary. It's a medical marijuana program. Retailers are called dispensaries, and in the OLCC program they're called retailers. This was neither, because it wasn't licensed. It was more like a lemonade stand where you just open it up one day. So, yeah, from the back room in the dispensary or retailer area.
And was that the bud marijuana or the hash oil you just referred to?
That was the hash oil that I referred to. I do. Thank you.
And can you state and spell your name for us?
My name is Tyler Bechtel. Last name is spelled B-E-C-H-T-E-L. And I'm a sergeant with Oregon State Police.
And you also participated in this investigation of the Ganja and Trina's Treehouse businesses?
I did.
Okay. And what was your role prior to the search warrant being executed?
Sure. So I supervised the marijuana program within the state police, and I supervised the detectives working on this case.
He is still employed, but again on leave for undisclosed reasons. This leave started only weeks after a paid disciplinary leave to allow an investigation into the conduct detailed in the District Attorney's Office memorandum. Peterson's falsified records were used to convict citizens in court. Those false records were the basis for search warrant applications where Trooper Peterson misrepresented, by omission, the qualifications of his dog and its handler. He seized drugs that then disappeared. There is no record that the drugs were ever placed into evidence or destroyed. He denied defendants due process. He denied their right to an appropriate and honest inventory of any evidence and property. Numerous people remain in custody, on probation, or missing funds based on his fraudulent testimony and record-keeping. Oregon State Police have had this evidence and these findings for months without disclosing it to the public. Trooper Peterson is still employed by the Oregon State Police and they are complicit in his constitutional violations. Taxpayers still pay his salary. Far from sanctioning him for his myriad misdeeds, the OSP allowed Trooper Peterson to testify at grand jury, assist in the indictment of other defendants, continue stopping vehicles on public highways and presumably continue to racially profile people employed by the Oregon State Police and they are complicit in his constitutional violations. Taxpayers still pay his salary. Far from sanctioning him for his myriad misdeeds, the OSP allowed Trooper Peterson to testify at grand jury, assist in the indictment of other defendants, continue stopping vehicles on public highways and presumably continue to racially profile people on the interstate. The grand jurors before whom he provided sworn testimony were not informed of his discipline.
A previous coworker who was also in the same position that I was in was receiving complaints because as compliance specialists, we were split up into different areas of the city. So I believe that was her area of the city and had received complaints from other retail establishments, one being directly across the street that hadn't opened yet, but was in the process of completing their application and going towards licensing.
And so at the time that this complaint was received, there was an existing complaint from an existing business or a business that was about to open up. Did that complaint come from a business that was licensed?
They hadn't been licensed yet, but we're going through the process.
So your office received this complaint, and was that complaint, that business, associated with any specific person?
Can you repeat that?
Was that business associated or owned by a specific person?
Well, the company that was Mota.
Oh, a partner.
The definition of a medical dispensary. I am not familiar with Portland city codes. Do you think that's something you should have been familiar with before you came to Portland to do marijuana business? No. Can you tell me the state definition of a medical dispensary?
describe a medical dispensary generally, but no, I do not have the statute that allows for them memorized. Do you know the definition of a medical dispensary within the city of Portland? No. Do you know the definition of a medical dispensary in the state of Oregon? OHA probably defines it somewhere, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Marijuana and the BH oil, the hash oil that was recovered during the warrant, that was sent to the state crime lab for testing, is that correct?
Yes, I believe it was. I have some...
I just wanted to clarify that was
Perfect.
Connected to your investigation.
Yeah, and so what I'm going to do here is it's item E74, so I'm just going to look on the evidence forms and I'll be able to tell you which location that came from. Because frankly, it was in both places, in multiple places. Came from, and it's a sample from a separate item E57 that came from the back freezer room of the dispensary itself, the Ganja, which would be the location 1, or the, I keep saying dispensary, it's a medical marijuana program. Retailers are called dispensaries, and in the OLCC program they're called retailers. This was neither, because it wasn't licensed. It was more like a lemonade stand where you just open it up one day. Okay. So yeah, from the back room in the dispensary or retailer area.
And was that the bud marijuana or the hash oil you just referred to?
That was the hash oil that I referred to. I do. Thank you.
And can you spell your name for us?
My name is Tyler Bechtel. Last name is spelled Bechdtel. And I'm a sergeant with Oregon State Police.
And you also participated in this investigation of the Ganja and Trina's Treehouse businesses?
I did.
Okay. And what was your role prior to the search warrant being executed?
Sure. So I supervised the marijuana program within the state police, and I supervised...
Employed, but again on leave for undisclosed reasons. This leave started only weeks after a paid disciplinary leave to allow an investigation into the conduct detailed in the District Attorney's Office memorandum. Peterson's falsified records were used to convict citizens in court. Those false records were the basis for search warrant applications where Trooper Peterson misrepresented, by omission, the qualifications of his dog and its handler. He seized drugs that then disappeared. There is no record that the drugs were ever placed into evidence or destroyed. He denied defendants due process. He denied their right to an appropriate and honest inventory of any evidence and property. Numerous people remain in custody, on probation, or missing funds based on his fraudulent testimony and record-keeping. Oregon State Police have had this evidence and these findings for months without disclosing it to the public. Trooper Peterson is still employed by the Oregon State Police and they are complicit in his constitutional violations. Taxpayers still pay his salary. Far from sanctioning him for his myriad misdeeds, the OSP allowed Trooper Peterson to testify at grand jury, assist in the indictment of other defendants, continue stopping vehicles on public highways, and presumably continue to racially profile people on...
A previous coworker who was also in the same position that I was in was receiving complaints because as compliance specialists, we were split up into different areas of the city. So I believe that was her area of the city, and had received complaints from other retail establishments, one being directly across the street, that hadn't opened yet, but was in the process of completing their application and going towards licensing. City.
And so at the time that this complaint was received, there was an existing complaint from an existing business, or a business that was about to open up. Did that complaint come from a business that was licensed?
They hadn't been licensed yet, but we're going through the process.
So your office received this complaint, and was that complaint, that business, associated with any specific person?
Can you repeat that?
Was that business associated or owned by a specific person?
Well, the company that was Mota.
Oh, pardon, I mean the one that you received the complaint about.
Oh, like the owner of that business?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you recall who that was?
I believe her name was Rosa Cazares.
Was that Mota?
Yeah, she's her and her husband own Mota.
And so you're telling us that the first complaint that your office technically had was from Rosa Cazares, from Mota and her husband?
From my knowledge, yes.
Okay. So the dispensary that wants to open up at the prime location where I want to open up, they're the first complaint you got?
I believe so.